My name is Malai. I'm 73 years old, and I need to confess something to you tonight. Something I carried in silence for most of my life. Something that nearly destroyed me before I understood what it was. I was a prisoner of my own mind for over 40 years. Not a prisoner of circumstance, not a prisoner of other people, a prisoner of the thoughts that lived inside my own head. Every morning I woke up to the same voices, the same fears, the same relentless whispers telling me I wasn't enough, that something was wrong, that danger was coming, that I needed to worry, to prepare, to brace myself for disaster. And I believed those voices. I believed them completely, because they came from inside me, because they sounded like me, because I didn't know there was any difference between the voice in my head and who I actually was. That confusion cost me decades of peace I could have had, decades of presence I missed, decades of life that passed by while I was trapped inside a prison I didn't know I was building with every thought I believed. Tonight I want to share with you 7 lessons that set me free, 7 truths that took me a lifetime to understand. 7 keys that finally opened the cell door I didn't even know existed. The first lesson changed everything. You are not your thoughts. I know these words have been spoken before. I know they might sound like something you've heard and dismissed, but please stay with me, because when this truth moves from your mind to your heart, when you stop understanding it and start living it, your entire world transforms. For most of my life, I believed that my thoughts were me. When fear arose, I was afraid. When criticism arose, I was flawed. When worry arose, I was in danger. I had no separation between the thoughts passing through my mind and my sense of who I was. Every negative thought became a verdict about my worth. Every anxious thought became a prophecy about my future. And I accepted these verdicts and prophecies without question. Because how could I question my own mind? How could I doubt my own voice? But here's what I discovered in the quiet of a temple, after years of suffering had finally brought me to my knees. Thoughts are not truth. Thoughts are events. They arise like clouds in the sky, stay for a moment, and then drift away. And you, the real you, are not the clouds. You are the sky. You are the vast, unchanging awareness in which thoughts appear and disappear. This might sound abstract, it might sound philosophical, but it is the most practical truth I have ever learned. Because the moment you realize that you are not your thoughts, you have a choice you didn't know existed. The choice to let a thought pass without believing it. The choice to observe without obeying. The choice to be free. The second lesson came to me slowly, painfully, over many years of trying and failing to think my way to peace. Your mind is not designed to make you happy. It's designed to keep you safe. This understanding changed my entire relationship with my own thinking. I had spent years frustrated with my mind. Why was it always worried? Why did it always find the negative? Why couldn't it just relax and let me enjoy my life? I thought something was wrong with me, that I was broken in some fundamental way. But I wasn't broken. My mind was working exactly as it was designed to work. The human mind evolved over millions of years to do one thing above all else: keep you alive. It scans for threats constantly. It remembers every bad thing that ever happened so you won't repeat the mistake. It imagines disasters so you can prepare. It never fully relaxes because in the ancient world, relaxation could mean death. This mechanism kept our ancestors alive. It helped them survive predators and famines and dangers we can barely imagine. But that same mechanism, running in a modern life where there are no tigers outside the door, creates suffering. It creates anxiety without cause, worry without reason, a constant low-level fear that something is wrong even when nothing is wrong. Understanding this didn't make my mind suddenly peaceful, but it changed how I related to the noise. I stopped taking it personally. I stopped thinking the anxiety meant something was wrong with me. I started seeing it as my ancient brain doing its ancient job, trying to protect me, just not very skillfully for the world I actually live in. The third lesson is about the most precious resource you have, your attention. Where you place your attention determines your experience of life. This truth seems simple, almost too simple, but it contains a power that most people never discover or use. Your mind generates thoughts constantly. You cannot stop this. You cannot control what thoughts arise, but you can control which thoughts you feed with your attention. Imagine your attention as sunlight. Whatever you shine it on grows stronger. Fear, gratitude, worry, love, resentment, peace. They all grow when you give them your attention, and they all fade when you withdraw it. I spent years unknowingly feeding my fears. Every worried thought that arose, I gave it my full attention. I examined it, I engaged with it, I tried to solve it. And in doing so, I made it stronger. I was watering weeds and wondering why my garden was full of them. The shift happened when I learned to redirect my attention. Not by fighting thoughts. Fighting only creates more engagement. By gently, persistently returning my attention to what I wanted to grow, to my breath, to the present moment, to the simple fact of being alive right now. This redirection isn't easy at first. The mind resists. It wants to go back to its familiar patterns. But with practice, with patience, the attention becomes more obedient and the garden begins to change. If these words are reaching something inside you, if you're beginning to see your own patterns in what I'm describing, then I want you to know that this recognition is precious. It's the beginning of everything. And if you found something valuable in this space, something that speaks to the part of you that's searching for peace, I hope you'll stay close. These words are here for you whenever you need them. The fourth lesson requires courage. because it asks you to do something that feels dangerous. Stop believing everything your mind tells you. We are taught from childhood to trust our own thoughts, to listen to the voice in our head, to take seriously the stories our mind constructs about ourselves and the world. But your mind lies to you constantly, not intentionally, not maliciously. It simply doesn't have enough information to tell the truth. It fills in gaps with assumptions. It interprets ambiguous situations as threats. It takes one piece of evidence and builds an entire case. And the stories it tells feel true because they come from inside you. But feeling true and being true are very different things. I remember the years I spent believing the story that I was fundamentally unlovable. My mind had constructed this narrative from bits and pieces of painful experiences, and it presented this narrative to me as fact, and I believed it. I lived as if it were true. I made choices based on it. I pushed people away because my mind had convinced me they would leave anyway. And none of it was true. It was just a story my mind had created from fear and pain and incomplete information. The day I started questioning that story, really questioning it, asking for evidence, looking for alternative explanations, was the day it began to lose its power. Not immediately. Stories don't die easily, but slowly, layer by layer, the false narrative crumbled, and what remained underneath was something I hadn't expected. Simple existence, simple being, not unlovable, not lovable, just here, just alive, just enough. The fifth lesson is one of the hardest to accept. What you resist persists. For years I fought my negative thoughts. I tried to push them away. I tried to argue with them. I tried to replace them with positive thoughts, and they only grew stronger. Every morning I would wake up determined to think differently. And every night I would lie, exhausted from the battle, with the same thoughts circling like vultures. What I didn't understand was that resistance is a form of attention. When you fight a thought, you're still engaging with it. You're still giving it your energy. You're still making it the center of your mental world. The alternative isn't fighting, it's allowing. Letting the thought be there without engaging with it. Observing it without reacting to it. Watching it arise and pass away like a wave on the ocean. This is not passive. This is not giving up. This is the most powerful response there is. Because a thought that is observed without resistance loses its fuel. It arises, it stays for a moment, and because you're not feeding it with engagement, it fades away. I spent decades fighting battles that could have been avoided simply by not showing up to fight. By letting the thoughts be there without making them my problem. By understanding that I didn't have to engage with every mental event simply because it appeared in my mind. The sixth lesson transformed my relationship with time. The mind lives in the past and future. Peace lives only in the present. This is not poetry. This is practical observation. Watch your mind for a single day and you will see the truth of it. How much time does it spend replaying past events, analyzing what happened, regretting what you did, wishing things had been different? How much time does it spend anticipating the future, worrying about what might happen, planning for scenarios that may never occur, dreading what could go wrong? And how much time does it spend here, in this moment, where life actually happens, where your breath moves in and out of your body, where your heart beats, where you actually exist? For most of my life, I lived almost entirely in mental time. Rarely was I actually present. Rarely was I actually here. I was always somewhere else, somewhere in memory or anticipation. And that somewhere else was always colored by the mind's negativity bias. The past was full of regret. The future was full of fear. Only the present was free of both. Only the present was clear. I learned to come back again and again. Every time I noticed my mind had wandered into memory or anticipation, I would gently bring it back to now, to my breath, to my body, to the simple fact of being here. And in that returning, I found what I had been searching for everywhere else: peace. Not permanent peace, the mind still wanders, but accessible peace, available peace. Peace that is always here when I remember to return. The seventh lesson brought everything together. Taking back control of your mind is not a battle, it's a homecoming. I approached this work for years as a fight, me against my mind, discipline against chaos, control against surrender. And that approach kept me stuck, because you cannot defeat your mind through force. You cannot dominate your way to peace. The mind is not an enemy to be conquered. It's a frightened child to be comforted, a wild horse to be gentled, a part of yourself that has been trying in its own confused way to protect you. When I stopped fighting my mind and started understanding it, everything changed. When I met anxious thoughts with compassion instead of frustration, they began to soften. When I met self-critical thoughts with gentleness instead of shame, they began to quiet. Not because I had defeated them, because I had removed the conditions that made them necessary. Fear responds to safety. Pain responds to tenderness, and a mind that feels met, understood, accepted is a mind that can finally rest. I'm 73 years old now. I live in a temple surrounded by trees and silence. My mind is quieter than it has ever been. Not silent, never completely silent, but quiet enough to hear what lies beneath the noise, quiet enough to feel my own presence, quiet enough to know, finally, who I am beneath all the thinking. These 7 lessons took me 40 years to learn. I offer them to you in the hope that you won't need 40 years. that something in these words will plant a seed tonight, that the seed will grow, and that one day, perhaps sooner than you think, you'll discover what I discovered. Before I go, I want to ask you something, not because I need an answer, because you might. Which of these lessons speaks to you most deeply tonight? Which one touches something you've been carrying? I'd love to know where you're listening from and what brought you to these words. Because every person who finds this message is part of something larger. A quiet community of people searching for the same thing. Peace within their own minds, freedom within their own lives. And knowing that you're here, that you're part of this, matters more than you might realize. My name is Malai. I was a prisoner of my own thoughts for most of my life. And then I learned the door was never locked. I learned the walls were made of mist. I learned that freedom was always one choice away. The choice to observe instead of believe, to allow instead of resist, to return instead of wander. You have that choice too, right now, in this moment. You have always had it. You just didn't know it yet.